The casters from your beaver are also an important part of the value of the overall beaver, with some years being more lucrative than others. The average is between $40 and $50 a pound. Years when the pelt prices are low on beaver and fewer beaver are harvested usually means an increased value for the casters. This is because the major demand for casters is in the perfume industry and is totally unrelated to the price of fur. Casters are graded into 3 qualities depending on the amount of castoreum or liquid contained in the glands. Number 1 is called clean. They're plump and full and easy to identify. The best of these came from beaver taken under the ice in late winter. They may range in weight between 4 ounces to as high as 8 or 10 ounces in very big males. These carry a top price. Number 2s, called ordinary, are much less full but do have some castoreum. They look like they've been drained. The size is often the same, just less distended. These are usually beaver taken in mid-fall and spring. These also include number 1 casters that may have holes in them or be slightly damaged. The value of this grade usually runs about 20% less than the number 1s. The third grades are called shells. These are casters with no content, usually very flat and shriveled, mostly from very young and late spring beaver. This grade also includes damages from the first 2 grades. Shells will run about 40 to 50% less than number 2s. The contents of the caster's glands can't be controlled by the trapper other than the time of year, but it's surprising how much castor is downgraded each season just from poor handling, especially when a majority of these problems are easily avoided. When you remove the casters, it is important to trim all the meat and tissue off the sacks. Then the casters should be dried thoroughly for 3 to 4 days, or until the surface is dry and slightly crusted over. Properly dried casters should be a brownish golden color. Dark-colored casters are either over-dried or the temp was too warm. Be sure to dry all sides in the saddle between the 2 sacks. Don't tie the sacks off with a string or thread. Then, when they are thoroughly dry, place them in the freezer. Leaving the casters any longer just allows them to dry more and lose weight. And do not include the oil sacs with your casters. The oil sacs do not have any value in the perfume industry and will be discarded. A few days before you intend to ship the casters, they should be taken out of the freezer and allowed to re-dry and reform the crust. When they are dry, place them in an open mesh bag or paper bag, and then a cardboard box. If you have a large number of casters, over 10 pounds, it's better to use several boxes. Just the weight of the top casters in the box can squeeze the liquid out of those on the bottom. Late in the year, this will attract maggots. Never use plastic bags or box liners. This will always cause the casters to mold. Be sure to label the box with your name and shipper's number. Casters that are not fully dried must all be rehandled and dried when they reach the auction house. This takes time and often results in additional weight loss for the trappers. There is no sense trying to beat the system. The graders are professionals and not much gets by them.
Sometimes you get some very unusual looking castoreum. You can see these ones look extremely large in size. They're very firm. They're very suspicious looking. And what happened in this case was that the trapper took some of the smaller pods and stuffed them into a bigger pod. What will happen in this case is they will be graded as ordinaries, number 2 caster. We also find caster that are full of gravel, ball bearings, nuts, bolts, etc. Don't stuff your casters. They're worth nothing if you do that.
Casters that are not dry and trimmed well mold very quickly and even taint. This immediately downgrades the sacks if the mold is too severe. Then each set of casters must be individually scrubbed with linseed oil to remove the mold before they can be sold. This all costs money, and it's an easy fix. We have all heard that casters are used as a base for some of the world's most expensive and glamorous perfumes. Great pride is taken in relaying that, if any women are listening. But I think the most novel and probably the best use for beaver castor is after a long cold day in the woods, a good rousing nip of castor gin. This is the old French tradition, and no self-respecting trapper on the north shore of the St. Lawrence would ever think of not having a jar or two to warm up and share with his trapping buddies. Casters are an important part of your beaver harvest. Well-handled casters can add a lot to your fur check. Remember these key points in working with casters. Take some time and care removing your casters. Trim them carefully. Dry them well. Re-dry before shipping. Pack in mesh or paper, never plastic, and ship in labeled boxes.